We made it halfway. We've done half a season virtually, just like the old days.
These good times when I sit in a virtual room with Andy directly on top of me for an entire podcast.
I apologize for any stink or stank, and hope that it doesn't get much warmer in here, because it'll be heck of a lot stinkier.
The virtual room, it's a constant state of Febreze. It's fine.
Okay. Let's do it. Hello, and welcome to Temple of the False Pod, where our decks are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I am Bruce.
And with this being our 5th episode of Season 6, we've made it all the way around the color pie for Enchantments, and so we figured we'd start something new. We've got Temple's Treasures coming at you, where we discuss underplayed, undervalued, underappreciated cards in the EDH format, and we throw them at you. So watch your eyes, maybe wear some protective goggles. This week we got Green Sorceries? Is that what we decided?
Green Sorceries.
Good, because that's what I brought to the table.
Yeah.
A handful of cards. We were talking about this before, but the card selection pool of which we have to choose from is much smaller than any other season before.
Yeah. Turns out, old sorceries, they're either
not great.
Well, they're either not great or they're used a ton.
Yeah.
So, turns out a card like Cultivate isn't going to show up on our list.
So
actually, we should explain the rules before we go any farther.
Yeah. Do you want to do that, or you want to do it?
Sure, I'll jump in.
Yeah.
So, the rules here are, we're looking for green, we're looking for sorceries, we're looking for cards that existed before 8th edition. In other words, we want old border cards. And no, we're not cheating and getting new cards that have the old border treatment. These are cards that were originally in old border. The other part is, we generally wanted to find cards you probably haven't heard of. So to do this, we've also decided that we check all of our cards against EDHRec. And if they come in at with under 2,000 decks, we can include those in our list. And I will say, Andy, this time around, I even brought it right down. I went for under 1,000 on this list.
Same, actually.
And yeah, so we've found cards that are not being frequently used in a lot of decks, and thought we would share them here today with you.
Yeah.
I think that was all the rules. Right?
Yeah.
I didn't miss anything.
There were definitely some cards that I was looking at that were between 1,000 and 2,000. But I decided, you know what? Let's just keep it under 1,000. I think that's generally what we've been able to do before.
Yeah, it's been...
And I think we were able to now.
Yeah.
Just a disclaimer, these cards are not good, but they are fun. They are extremely niche. And if you find a use for it, just play it, because there's always the idea for these episodes has come from this time-honored tradition of going, what does that card do? Which always ends up leading to exciting plays, fun stories, and memorable experiences.
Yes, and I will say, Andy, while you said these cards aren't good, I will say that these cards are good in the right deck. So you followed it up by saying niche, and I think that's really where it shines. So we're going to describe a card, and you're going to say, wow, that card would be garbage in my deck. And yes, it probably would be. However, then you look at a different green deck and say to yourself, oh, that would be delightful. That's kind of what we're going for.
Let's get right into it.
Let's do this.
My first card today is Animal Magnetism. 4 and a green, sorcery, obviously. reveal the top 5 cards of your library. An opponent chooses a creature card from them. Put that card onto the battlefield and the rest into your graveyard.
I almost picked this card.
This deck shows up in 64 decks.
Yes.
Or sorry, this card shows up in 64 decks. Which is wild to me, because I feel like a lot of green decks have weird graveyard shenanigans. A lot of commander decks have a lot of weird graveyard shenanigans. And because it's green, it's so creature-based that, like, you know, it's 5 cards. The chances of there being a creature is good. It's a deck that you built, so the chances of that creature being something that you'd want, generally pretty good. Especially if you're going to get it for what amounts to as free. And if your deck has anything to do with the graveyard, then it is worth 5 mana.
Right. When I looked at it, I looked at it and said, would I pay 5 mana to choose, and then to be able to choose the worst creature of the top 5 out of the top 5 cards in my library? And there are going to be times when, no, I'm going to be disappointed because I'm going to get, you know, a mana rock, some creature that taps for mana, or some creature that has a low casting cost, and I'm going to say to myself, wow, I paid 5 for this. The key is exactly what you were talking about. It's those other 4 cards are going to your graveyard, and that's really where it's going to matter. That's where this card is really going to shine, because as soon as you've got any kind of graveyard recursion with your deck, okay, so now your opponent is looking at this and trying to decide which of these creatures to give you, and knowing that you're going to get them both at some point. So, and I'm saying both because I figured the average deck has somewhere between 25, the average green deck is somewhere between 25 and maybe 40% creatures. I know 40% is probably pretty high. So I think that you're going to get 1 or 2 creatures in that top 5.
Yeah.
Well,
especially where, like, you know, you're at a point in the game where you can spend 5 mana.
Right.
So, like, you've already drawn, you've already put down lands. You know, you've probably got, let's say, conservative guess, 75 cards left in your deck.
Right. The thing, people look at this and they say, oh, they're going to get the worst one. I'm like, how many did you think they're going to get?
Yeah.
I'm going to give you the 5 cards, and you're going to give me the worst creature card in that 5. Well, there's probably only going to be one. So you're going to have to give it to me. And it doesn't matter what it is.
Also, don't put bad creatures in your deck.
Well, this is just, I mean, they're going to give you the one that's the worst in the current scenario, and I get that. But it just, odds are there's only going to be one, so they're going to have to give it to you. So if you're playing it, and of course, I can't think of a single creature off the top of my head right now.
Siege Rhino.
Sure.
I don't know why you're playing Siege Rhino in Commander, but go for it.
There you go. So Siege Rhino. Well, you're going to get it. You're playing acidic. If you get acidic slime, you get it. Because
there you go. That's a better.
There's no
example.
choice. There's really no choice. And if they give you, and if you get a choice between, I'm old school. Let's say acidic slime or birds of paradise. Well, okay, so they give you the birds. Well, great. I now have a chump blocker, and I can tap it for mana. And the acidic slime is in my graveyard, where I'm going to recur it back and get the enter the battlefield trigger anyway. So what's the downside?
Absolutely.
And that is all assuming that all you're caring about is the creatures, because maybe you're playing green. There's a good chance that you can recur lands. There's a good chance that it's not just creatures that you can get back. It's virtually any card in your graveyard. So you're adding 4 cards to your graveyard.
I also like the idea that in that 5 cards could very well be Gaia's Blessing, which would then just shuffle your graveyard back into your library. Also, you're playing green. I mean, things like, Sylvan Library. We've got Sensei's Divining Top getting a reprint. I mean, you have ways to manipulate the top of your library.
Right.
maybe not as much as like other colors, blue, but it is there, and there is a chance you know what creature may be on the top of that library.
Right. You can make it work. And I mean, I get it. The reason this card isn't in a lot of decks is, one, because it's ancient and most people haven't heard of it, and two, it does cost 5. That is a downside. 5 is a lot. If you're just looking at a 1-for-1, you don't really want to pay 5 mana for most of the creatures that are going to be in your deck, because most of them won't cost 5. But
also, this Ron Spears art is so cool. It's like this weird braided, I don't know, river with like a rhino and like an Avon something and some sort of merfolk with horns. I don't know. It's super cool, super colorful. If you have a chance to go see it, go look it up.
Just check it out.
It's fantastic. Yeah, so that's my first card.
All right, my first card. It's actually a card that I suspect a lot of you have heard of, and honestly, I was really surprised that it was only in 600 decks. And suspect the reason it's only in 600 is probably because it's getting outclassed. However, it's Creeping Mold. Creeping Mold costs 2 and 2 green. It's a sorcery. It says destroy target artifact, enchantment, or land. I just described acidic slime, which destroys much the same, and is a 2/2 creature with death touch. That only costs 1 more. However, Creeping Mold does only cost 4. And as decks become more and more streamlined, and the mana cost becomes more and more of a feature that's completely dominating your card selection, Creeping Mold is an option. I like the card. It's very straightforward. It works.
Yeah,
it works.
Seems great. There were definitely a few that I looked at that did very similar things, especially in terms of enchantment destruction. And I was like, ooh, I should include this, or I should include this. And there's obviously better cards to do it. Creeping Mold is extremely flexible with it letting you destroy a land, which, generally you don't want to abuse too much. But when it's, part of, if you have the card, use it. But be wary of what you're using it to target. With cards like this, you want to be able to wait until the very last possible second to use it. So don't just blow it and destroy somebody's, I don't know, Azorius Chancery just because they can produce 2 mana with it. Wait until somebody's got I don't know, a Faceless Haven or Gaia's Cradle, something that is too impactful. Or, I mean, obviously, enchantments. Enchantment removal is something that we're seeing more and more of in Commander as a whole because there wasn't enough for the longest time in terms of people playing it. Obviously, clearly, it's been here the whole time.
Right, and I do think Creeping Mold is going to be fine as an artifact or enchantment removal, but it's the fact that it also gets rid of a land, or it can also do get rid of the land, is what I think makes this card as good as it is. Its flexibility, so if there isn't a land to get rid of, then you have other options, but there's almost always going to be a land you want to get rid of, and you're not going to get a lot of pushback from your opponents when you play Creeping Mold to get rid of one of their lands. I know that land destruction is not, generally frowned on, but this is an isolated piece of land destruction. It's not, in and of itself is not going to cause any sort of hate from your group.
Right.
You're going to take out that Maze of Ith. You're going to take out that strip mine. You're going to take out that Gaia's Cradle or whatever card, whatever land you're looking to that's causing an issue, and just solve that problem. So that's the reason I picked Creeping Mold. Oh, and I guess if people are looking to pick it up, man, oh man, There are so many printings of this. Go through, look at the pictures first. Find something with beautiful art, because the art from Mirrodin, I am not a big fan of, but there's some other ones, like some of the original out of Visions.
The original from Visions
is just
horse's
fun.
ass, if you ask me.
Yes, it's quite literally.
Quite literally, honestly.
Yes.
My favorite's the White Castle one from 7th edition.
Okay, yeah.
It's just like it. I don't know.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
looks
white
good.
castle with mold and a little wizard man casting, I guess, this spell on it.
Right, and it's been printed as recently as Kaladesh, so you can find a copy. That will not be an issue for this card. So, Andy,
my next card. Is we've been hearing a lot about Chain of Smog lately for whatever reason. I think it was brought up a lot in reference to a lot of Strixhaven cards. So my next card, I was surprised to see, only shows up in 461 decks. It is Chain of Acid, clearly from the same cycle. Chain of Acid is 3 and a green. Destroy target non-creature permanent. Then that permanent's controller may copy this spell and may choose a new target for that copy. I love the idea of this card because obviously it can just continue to go. It can target lands.
Yeah.
It can target literally anything other than creatures, which is interesting because if any of you have played with any of these this cycle, it is just pretty much until somebody is like, fine, I need to put an end to this, I'm not gonna continue, or hopefully one thing happens and then that person's like, fine, stop. But it creates a chain, and it's fantastic. I don't know what else to say about it. I was just surprised to see that it was in less than 500 decks.
Yeah.
Because I feel like sure, the downside is that eventually somebody will destroy something of yours, but that just means you can destroy something of theirs again.
Right.
It is a less efficient, less, I don't know. Like if you put all of your stock into creatures, then this is exactly where you need to go. Because this can't hit creatures.
Right. I think the interesting part of this for me is the multiplayer aspect. So if I play it, I want to target. It depends on what you're looking for. So if I have an opponent who's comfortably in front and who has 3 different permanents that are all miserable, they're not creatures, I target one of them, I destroy that. Now that person now has a chance to destroy somebody else's permanent. Not even necessarily mine, because maybe I've got garbage. But they have to know that if they target me or anybody or any of the other opponents playing, that they are likely going to get targeted right back. So if you've got 3 artifacts and they're all dominating, or if you're playing and I have Doubling Season and Parallel Lives, well, just Doubling Season and Parallel Lives, you target my Doubling Season. Now it's my turn. Well, am I going to now take out somebody else's, knowing that my Parallel Lives is going to be the next one out?
Right.
So you're probably just going to be like, no, I'm just going to suck it up.
Yeah. No, you spent 4 mana to destroy it.
Right.
Good job.
Whereas if I only have the Doubling Season, and after that all I've got are a bunch of creatures, well, okay, so now I'm going to find somebody else and pick their stuff in the hopes that they will then turn around and do it again to somebody else, because I, of course, want it to continue because I have garbage and I want all the good stuff going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's interesting to see the dynamic of this and how this plays out in multiplayer. And so if you're picking the best permanent on the battlefield or the best non-creature permanent on the battlefield, if that person has the top two, they have to know they're going to get hammered right back if they give somebody else the chance. So
yeah,
when
and I like the idea too, where like if you're playing green, you're probably very creature heavy anyway,
right?
So the only way that it comes back to bite you in the butt is if they start destroying your lands, in which case you lose a land and then you're like, all right, fine, I get it.
Yeah.
So, there's very little downside to this card.
Right.
Other than the fact that it's a 4-mana sorcery.
Yeah. Well, you can't have everything, right?
Yeah. And it continues my night of Ron's, because this beautiful Ron Spencer art, just fantastic. That goblin, top 10 goblins, for sure.
It's right up there. Right up there. All right, my second.
Uh-huh.
Seeds of Innocence.
Seeds of Innocence. Isn't that a U2 album?
I don't think so. Seeds of Innocence is it's a Mirage card, which is probably why you haven't heard of it. It's never had a reprint. So
okay.
And it's never going to. It's on the reserve list. By the way, this one costs $16. Sorry, folks. It's good. I can't help it. Seeds of Innocence says, destroy all artifacts. They can't be regenerated. The controller of each of those artifacts gains life equal to its mana cost. Yeah. So the reason that this one is as good as it is because it's going to wipe out mana rocks. You're playing green, so you've got a bunch of creatures that are making mana, or you've gone out and got a ton of you've ramped all of your lands. So you're not relying on mana rocks, but they are. So this costs 1 green and a green. This is 3 mana total. So when turn 4 hits, and they've got their second mana rock out there, they've got their, and then whatever, they've got their Sensei's Divining Top, they've got whatever else they've got out there. All of these cheap mana rocks. And you play Seeds of Innocence. They're each going to lose all of that. They're going to get put back at least a turn's worth of mana. And what are they getting in return? Well, when their Soul Ring dies, they get 1 life. When their Felwar Stone is destroyed, they get 2. Most of the time, they're going to see maybe 2 to 4 life gain and lose 2 artifacts. By the way, this also works in the late game. When your opponent has, 15 or 20 treasures, it takes them all out and they get nothing.
Yeah, it's either they get to sacrifice them all and not get the life, or
right. It's like,
get the
okay,
life for it.
Use them now, on an instant, or some sort of ability. You got to use it all right now. This card is great, and I understand that part of the reason it's only in 354 decks is because of the reserve list. There aren't that many of them out there. It is currently $16 as of the recording of this podcast. So it's not cheap, but I love this card.
For cards that destroy all artifacts, which it's not great that it's symmetrical, but for cards of that caliber, you have to look other way. Like the other cards that do this are Bane of Progress, which is a 6 mana creature, which sure you get stuff out of that, but Nev's Disc, which is slow. Rampage of the Clans, which is 4 mana, even if it's an instant, but they get creatures out of that.
Right.
And then I guess the closest, I have it all up on Scryfall.
Yeah.
I'm not just a genius. Creeping Corrosion, which is 4 mana and doesn't have the life gain, but the life gain is negligible. Even if it is, like you said, 15 treasures, it's only 15 life, which sure can be a lot, but you're playing green.
It's not even 15 life. It's none. Treasures cost nothing.
Wow.
It's equal to the mana cost.
I did not finish reading that card.
It is so... When you're talking about a format right now where treasures and food and clues and all of these other artifact and your other cards that make artifact token creatures or whatever, these are all zero costing cards that you get. Your opponents get nothing.
Yeah, I mean, and then on top of that too, like you've got a format where your mana rocks, the format as a whole, especially for enfranchised players, the CMC the mana value of these artifacts of the mana rocks are getting smaller and smaller.
Yes.
So that the format's faster and faster. They're not gaining as much life as probably when this card was printed.
Right. Well, and I mean, when the card was printed, the idea was, ooh, look at all of these moxes I'm going to take out. So all of your opponent's moxes would get destroyed, and because moxes cost 0, they would get nothing. Honestly, this is Commander. Assuming you're playing in Commander, this is a 40 life format. If I'm giving my opponents 4, 6, even 6 life, who cares? That's a drop in the bucket when I'm taking out all of their artifacts. So now I've talked about early game when you take out even in late game. Even if it's a 10 mana artifact creature, I'll give you 10 life. I mean, odds are that sucker was going to trample and infect me anyway. I'll take that. You take the life, and I will just, get rid of that creature and everything else. I think this is a great card.
Oh, absolutely. Especially now now that Neon Dynasty's been out for a month by the time this comes out, I'm sure we are starting to see how much artifacts and vehicles are actually starting to be pumped into the format from just this one set.
Right.
And I would argue that artifact removal is becoming the new put in more enchantment removal. It's starting to become put in more artifact removal.
Right.
We need it. But yeah.
Yeah.
We each have 2 more cards left. Let's throw it to a break real quick.
Okay.
We'll give our sponsor some breathing room, and we'll be right back.
This episode of Temple of the False Pod is brought to you by Channel, because that's the only way that card is going to get mentioned on this podcast. Channel. Abandoned Commander. Back to you.
Wow, cool. Can't believe that they gave us a sponsor.
Yeah, cool. That little known company, Channel. Channel.
I can't believe how cheap Channel is. I mean, it's banned in 3 formats, but it's legal in penny. Anyway, on to card number 3.
I have a Channel.
Here we go. This one's an 82 decks. It's a sorcery. Surprise, surprise. 2 and a green. It's called Nature's Cloak.
Okay.
It says green creatures you control gain Forest Walk until end of turn, which is fantastic. Obviously, this card works particularly well with the new Yavimaya, if you have it, which says like all lands are forests in addition to their whatever. Anyway, for those who don't know, Forest Walk says they can't be blocked as long as defending player controls a forest, which green is one of the most popular, definitely top 5 color in Commander. Very popular. A lot of people have forests just incidentally on the battlefield, and they will not see this coming. And even if they did, it's very hard for them to get rid of their forests that they already have.
Yeah.
So, this works particularly well as a finisher, or just getting rid of a really big threat player. This is like I said, this is an 82 decks It's wild that it's in that few decks. So I generally don't try to push cards that are more than $5 onto my lists like these, but like I feel like because that this is in so few decks, I'm just like my mind's blown. I'm like, why? I don't understand why this isn't being played more.
I suspect trample has something to do with it.
I mean, yeah, but
generally green cards are going to look for trample, so they're less willing to line this up as for forest walk, because trample is guaranteed to work every time. But I agree with you. There are so many decks that are going to be running green. This is just not a downside. And now,
even if the threat player isn't the one playing forests, this is very rarely a dead card in the game. The times that it is, wow, you really like are super unlucky that you're playing against 0 people playing green. Like I said, even if it's not the big bad at the time that has forests, everyone will gang up on that person, take them out, and then your next threat might have forests. And then, wow, amazing. Now all your creatures can't be blocked for the turn.
Right.
You're playing green, so generally creatures are going to be big.
Besides, we're seeing more and more of Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. And then everybody's playing the forests, and suddenly this just means your creatures are unblockable. But just yours.
Right, just yours and just your green ones. But, so what?
You were playing green.
Yeah, exactly.
Most of your creatures are going to be green anyway. So, that's... I like the card. I think that's certainly an option for a lot of decks.
Yeah. It's funny because this card is about the same price as Yavimaya, Cradle of Growth. At 9, 10-ish. It's, So, number 3, Bruce.
Number 3?
In no particular order.
I've got a particular order.
Oh, okay.
They're getting better.
Oh, geez.
Following along with my theme of let's destroy stuff, Reverent Silence. Now, Reverent Silence costs 3 and a green, but I want you to ignore that because it reads, if you control a forest, rather than pay this spell's mana cost, you may have each other player gain 6 life. In other words, this is free. And then it says, destroy all enchantments. So you get to destroy all enchantments, and all it's going to cost you is each of your opponents gaining 6 life. Now, we are a 40 life, Commander's a 40 life format. Adding 6 more is not going to be the make or break to this.
Yeah.
Odds
That's
are...
like giving an opponent 3 life in a normal 60 card.
Right, and odds are at least one of the opponents that's gaining 6 life is somebody that you wanted to gain 6 life. So there's also that. You're destroying all enchantments for free. It's for free. But, and you've also got a number of playgroups and a number of people who can't seem to move past the idea that life total is the determiner of who is the strongest player on the board. It happens way too much, and if you're giving all of your opponents 6 life, then suddenly you don't look like as big a threat. Even though you're the one who just destroyed all of the enchantments on the board, you're now 6 life behind everybody else. And, it's like, for a lot of players, that's reason enough for them not to swing at you. It's insane, but that's the case. So that's part of the reason why Reverend Silence is on here.
Nice.
Yeah, it's only been printed once. It was in Nemesis, worth a mere 21 cents. And in case you're wondering, it's in 219 decks on EDHRec.
I like it. I like that, it has got this, there are so many things out there, so many enchantments out there that are remove on site, that even for 4 mana, just for single removal, it is worth it. Like, Smothering Tithe, Rhystic Study,
Right.
etc., etc. These are enchantments that need to go. And, 4 mana, or no, not even 4 mana. Free.
Yeah.
And each person gets 6.
Right.
Gets rid of them right away.
Yeah. Gets rid of all those brand new shrines that your friends just bought.
Yeah. Gets rid of all of those enchantment creatures as well. It's great.
It is.
Gets rid of the pacifism that's on your biggest creature.
Yeah. I mean, there's always the downside to the word all, meaning you've got some stuff too that's dying.
Right.
Or that's being destroyed. And yeah, that's probably going to be the case, but
sometimes it's necessary.
If you're running this card, you're going to be aware, and you're not going to be running this card if you're running a deck that, if you're playing an Enchantress deck, you're not going to play Reverend Silence. You'll work it out. But if you're playing green and you're not loading up a bunch of enchantments, then this is an easy pick. So the other card that I was looking at instead of Reverend Silence was Multani's Decree. It also destroys all enchantments. It also costs 4. However, in that one, you gain 2 life for every enchantment that's destroyed. I like that, but I mean, Reverend Silence is free.
Right.
And you're gaining 2 life. Well, you could that could, I mean, hey, if you get rid of 7 or 8 enchantments, then yeah, that's a significant life gain. But when compared with Reverend Silence, which is free, I keep saying this, it's free. You can play it and then use that 4 mana for something else. Whereas Multani's Decree, you're using the 4 mana. So are you going to pay 4 mana to gain, I don't know, 6 life, 14 life, 20 life? That's not really where I want to go. So if I'm going to choose one or the other, I'll choose the Reverend Silence. If I want them both, great, but
absolutely.
That's the reason I chose Reverend Silence and not the Multani's Decree.
It's never understated enough how big of a difference, even just the difference between 0 and 1 mana is.
Yeah.
Not to mention the difference between 0 and 4 mana.
Right.
Reverend Silence is very good. Multani's Decree. Pretty good.
If you're looking at the art, I would choose Multani's Decree. But Reverend Silence, it's a great card. All right, that's Andy. We're up to you. Last card, the big one, the major one. This is what we've all been waiting for. This final choice.
So much.
No pressure. Yeah. But this is the last one.
It's 96 decks for a single green, just green.
Okay.
It's printed in Ice Age, Bruce's favorite set.
Bite you.
It's called Forgotten Lore. Target opponent chooses a card in your graveyard. You may pay green. If you do, repeat this process except that opponent can't choose a card already chosen for Forgotten Lore. Then, put the last chosen card into your hand. So basically, you pay green for the card. You cast the card. One of your opponents, maybe somebody who's trying to be nice, picks the creature or the card out of your deck or out of your graveyard and gives it to you. If you're like, that's not the one I wanted, you just pay green again, and they have to go choose something else. Now, yes, this is kind of leaving it up to chance, depending on how many cards you have in your graveyard and how much mana you have. But this gets you out of a tight spot because you can choose the opponent. Maybe, if this is played against me, I'm going to either ask them what they want, or I'm going to figure out what would work best for the board state. Because chances are the person who's casting this is not choosing the person who's in first, as it were. And if I choose wrong, they're just going to have me choose again. It's nice that they can't choose card that's already been chosen. And honestly, if you're the type of play group that plays, around 12 rounds, like, there's a good chance there's not a lot in your graveyard. So, like, this could go from being really cheap to being just a little less cheap. And I think for the fact that it's only in less than 100 decks, just seems off. And I would love to see this in action. I'm going to probably get a playset just to test it out, to see, I don't know, like, to see how the playgroup responds to it.
So if it's played in the early part of the game, then it doesn't matter which opponent you choose. Right. If you've got 2 cards in your graveyard and there's one of them that you want, you're just prepared to pay 2 green, because that's what it's going to cost you at worst. Because they'll choose the wrong card, you'll pay the green, and they'll choose the correct card and you'll put it in your hand. When you get to the mid game, when you've got 6 cards in your graveyard, then you start looking at it like, okay, which of the obvious cards in my graveyard are the obvious garbage that they're going to pick, and then you figure out how much you think it's going to cost to get that card from your graveyard, and then make your decision. As soon as you hit the mid game, that's when that target opponent phrase just makes all the difference.
Absolutely.
You're right. I mean, you can say to the opponent, look, I'm going to choose this card, and this is going to be great for both of us. Or if you will pick this card, then, I promise not to use it against you. And make your decision based on that. This is, a handy card to you. Well, so you're creating a lot of politics behind it.
It's definitely a much more interesting, and I think that's the thing, is much more interesting than your normal, regrowth, or where then you actually have to get it from the top of your deck as well. But it adds depth to the game rather than just adds, I don't know, like an extra step.
Right. And if your play group includes somebody who is likely to who has done a fact or fiction where they've split the 2 piles, 5 cards in one pile and nothing in the other, then you want to be playing Forgotten Lore.
Oh, absolutely.
Because those players are going to give you what you want. They just will, because they want to see how things go off. Or if they're doing 5-0 in a fact or fiction, it means you guys are both in trouble, and he wants you to have every option that you can to fix the situation. Well, Forgotten Lore is going to do the exact same thing, and you're going to get that card back for 1. And it is target card. It is not target creature card, target whatever. So if it's a land and you need it, you can try that. If it's if it is a creature, an enchantment, or whatever.
If it's a kill spell, if it's a board wipe, if it's
if it's a planeswalker card, you can get it back. So if you've zeroed out your planeswalker to get its ability, well, now you can try and get it back with Forgotten Lore. This is a great card. It's just
and
you just need to find the right people, and I think that makes for fun games.
I think too, kind of bringing it back for me to animal magnetism, like, as much as there is ways to manipulate the top of your library, there's ways to manipulate your graveyard. Get the cards out of there that you don't need.
Yes.
But, I mean, that involves the deck building process. So think about that as well.
Right.
All right, we got time for one last card, Bruce.
All right. I am going to bring this home with a card that could probably go into one of my decks. It didn't quite make the cut, or it didn't quite make the cat, because it didn't quite do enough. The card I'm talking about is Waiting in the Weeds. This is another card that costs 1, a green and a green, and it reads: each player creates a 1/1 green cat creature token for each untapped forest they control. Now, yes, this means your opponents also get it. However, they need to know that this is coming because they're tapping their lands. This is It's a sorcery. It's happening on your turn. So the only green that you've tapped up to this point, you've tapped 2 green. Hopefully you had enough sense to not tap forest and you tap dual lands or something else.
Or your mana dorks.
Right.
Or your great henge if you've got one.
And then you're getting a bunch of cats. Now, sure, I have no doubt that you're going to have some opponents that are also going to get 1/1 green creatures. That's bound to happen. We are talking about forests. It's the most popular color for Commander. So you're going to have opponents that are getting some benefit because they're bound to have 1 or 2 untapped forests. Fine. They aren't building their decks around getting those token creatures. They aren't. Your deck is designed to make this work better, and it's going to. And a lot of the times, hey, you want to find ways to give them creatures. There are so many cards that can punish your opponents for having more creatures, or have easy ways to do a single point of damage to your opponent's creatures. This is the number of cats that your opponents get is going to be so minor, or it's going to be a minor inconvenience. Waiting in the weeds is just straight up fun. Obviously, better in the late game when you've got a pile of forests, and you can make things work that way. Again, another card for Yavimaya, for our new
definitely
legendary Yavimaya. So yeah, waiting in the weeds. And this is another card from Mirage. However, this one is clearly not on the reserve list. It is a mere 62 cents.
Because he got that reprint.
He's got that reprint in Classic 6th edition. So
I think I've had a lot of fun looking at these old sorceries from I guess anywhere from 20 years ago to 25 years ago.
Oh, and Waiting in the Weeds, 355 decks.
Oh, wow.
EDHRec. So it's not huge. And it is a way to get a ton of token creatures for just 3. So
yeah,
if you've got, if your deck is green-white and you're playing Divine Visitation, well, now you're getting that many 4/4 angels. If you're playing Doubling Season, you're getting twice as many green creatures. If you're if you have ways to give all of your creatures +1/+1, they're all getting this. Those cat tokens, they are green. So if you've got I can't remember the name of the land that you can tap it and a green to put a +1/+1 counter on all creatures that came into the battle, all green creatures that come into the battlefield. Oran Reef. You're running Oran Reef. Yeah. You just doubled the size of all of your token creatures. There's all kinds of good ways to make this.
If you're playing Nature's Cloak, they all have Forest Walk now.
Boom! And if you're playing Nature's Cloak, then you better be playing the Yavimaya so that all lands are now forests in addition, and suddenly Waiting in the Weeds is just, here's a 1/1 creature for everybody, for all the lands that are on the board.
For all untapped lands.
Yes. And your lands will all be untapped, and theirs not as much.
Right. Yeah. So I think that's going to do it for us this week. Thanks for tuning in for Temple's Treasures. Next week, we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled programming with something about, I don't know, some sort of deck advice. Just, casual things.
The stuff.
You know how we do.
Yeah.
Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for listening. We're Temple of Falsepod, where X are not optimized, but our plays sure as heck are fun. I'm Andy.
I am Bruce.
We had a green old time today. Thank you so much for listening. And may your 5th land be the Temple.
Bye!
Wait. Before you go, I just wanted to say thank you for listening. You can reach out to us via email at falsepodmtg@gmail.com or on Twitter @falsepodmtg. Bruce is at ManaBurned, and I'm at Andy Weekend, though you'll definitely notice I use the podcast Twitter far more often. Now that we've got you here, make sure you subscribe, like, rate us on whatever podcast platform you use. It helps us out. It gets us more reach. Subscribe to us on our YouTube channel. Like a video there. Leave some comments for more casual enjoyment. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be back with some more timeless discussions about all things casual. So come hang out, and may your fifth land be the temple. Bye-bye. Should I do my best, Bruce? Bye!